So picture this, you open up your banking app and you have just a few $100s left until payday, but you know that your big payday is coming soon with your tax refund. So now what do? The second that refund hits, you feel like you can finally breathe again. But here's what you might not know. That money was yours the whole time. You've just been sending it to the IRS every single paycheck, interest-free, and letting them hold on to it until April. Well, today we're going to fix that. Welcome, new and returning Money Buddies. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming, and whether it's a fear around not paying enough in taxes and owing money to the IRS, or a constant stress because maybe you feel like you don't make enough money, but you're just waiting on that massive tax refund to hit, either option isn't great. So by the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly what to do with your tax refund that you've already gotten or you're about to get, whether it's paying off debt, starting to invest, or something else. And you're going to know how to adjust your withholding so that next year you're not living on the edge waiting for a paycheck that was already yours to begin with. And as you've heard me mention before on the podcast, tax planning is one of my favorite areas. So this is going to be a fun episode. And I think adjusting your tax withholdings so that they're accurate is one of the lowest hanging tax planning fruits out there. So I'm excited to apply all the knowledge I've learned in this space to help you learn how to use your tax refund and how to do better next year so that you can use your money now throughout the year. So let's get into today's episode that's packed with some great research to help you learn about using your tax refund. And today's case study is going to help drive home a lot of these points for you. All right, I want to start out right out the gate saying a large tax refund is not a good thing. And this first article is going to help back up my point here, and it's going to tell us why receiving a large tax refund is a bad thing. And of course, all the links that I referenced today are in the show notes. The disadvantages include 1, it's an interest-free loan to the government. 2, there's lost opportunity cost. 3, you have delayed access to funds. 4, you're at an increased risk for tax-related scams. 5, you have inaccurate tax withholdings and therefore lower paychecks. 6, you have a false sense of financial security. And 7, it complicates your financial planning. And the biggest one there to me is that interest-free loan that you're just gifting to the government. And especially on the back of that one is the lost opportunity cost. Even with a basic high-yield savings account, you could be earning 3 to 4% on your money. And if you think cash by itself in a savings account isn't going to keep up with inflation, guess what? The government loan that you're giving them certainly isn't going to keep up with inflation because you're getting no interest on that money. So the baseline opportunity cost with this is just 2, 3, 4% in a basic savings account. Shoot, even the Bank of America or Wells Fargo savings accounts that pay you absolutely nothing are a better option than sending extra money to the IRS. That's the baseline of opportunity cost. And don't forget about the lost potential value of investing and what that could be doing, or even just paying off your debt that you might have. What if your extra tax payment went towards your student loans at a maybe 6%, 7%, 9% interest rate? That's an even better return. And what if you invested it for the long term at an 8% to 12% average rate of return until you retire? And even with those two major points, the other ones are still a very big deal. It's hard to build a plan when you have such a random large sum of money coming in every year from taxes. So smooth out your income. Plus, are you stressing yourself out or living on the edge for no reason because you're putting too much money away in taxes? That doesn't seem fun. That doesn't seem exciting. So give yourself a raise, honestly. That's what it's going to feel like. Give yourself your money now and make sure you're paying the right amount in taxes. That's what I want to start off today's episode with, is how important it is to not overpay your taxes. And I hope I'm painting a good picture of what your money could be doing instead of just sitting in some random tax account waiting for a tax refund. But if you already got your big refund, I am going to help you in this episode figure out how to use it, whether it's paying off debt or investing for the future or something else altogether. But right before we get into that, I want to give some quick guidance from the IRS about your tax withholdings. They say to check your withholdings in order to avoid a surprise at tax time, whether it's a bill or receiving money that you could have been using throughout the year. They do give some guidelines on when to check on your withholdings, and that's early within the year, when the tax law changes, when you have a life change like marriage, divorce, birth, adoption, home purchase, retirement, or bankruptcy. If your wage changes or a spouse starts another job, you may need to change it. If your taxable income changes, if you have adjustments to income you need to consider, or if there's itemized deductions that you're going to be able to take advantage of, you can do all of that now before filing your taxes by adjusting your withholdings. But now let's get into what to do with your refund. And I'm going to open it up here with an article from Fidelity. Their first one is Save for Emergencies. A 2025 bank rate survey found that only 41% of American adults have enough money in their savings to pay a $1,000 emergency expense. So if you don't have that, you have to use your tax refund to build up your emergency fund to at least $1,000, right? Hopefully more than that, so you can actually have a healthy 3 to 6 months emergency fund. But if you're someone who doesn't have $1,000 to pay for an emergency expense, that is where your tax refund has to go. And I'm going to put my foot down pretty hard there. If you don't have an emergency fund, use your tax refund for that. But other options include saving for retirement, pay off high interest debt, splurge responsibly, and we'll talk about that one more here in a second, invest in yourself, and start saving for the holidays. All of these are great ideas, and we're going to talk about investing specifically and paying off debt more in a little bit, so I want to talk about some of the other options. It really wouldn't be a bad idea to use your tax refund to spend on yourself, whether it's buying something that you want, that you can now afford because of the extra money, or because the rest of your financial plan is in place. It may also be a good idea to invest in yourself through something like a course or a certificate that could help you further your career or your education. And I really like the idea of starting to save for the holidays because that is something that gets overlooked, even though it happens every single year. I've done many episodes in the past about all of these different things, including splurging for yourself, investing in yourself, and saving for the holidays. But I think the holidays one is the one that continually surprises people. So if you can get that one figured out, it's really going to help you get some momentum towards every other area. So if you can use your tax refund to build some momentum towards a goal that you want to accomplish, do it. That's going to help you build momentum and get excited about your other financial goals. And if your tax refund is what it takes for you to realize that you can get control of your money, that's fantastic. But let's go a little bit deeper in the main two areas that people think about when it comes to using their tax refund, and that's paying off debt and or investing that money. So we'll start off here with debt. And this article is titled, Should I Use My Tax Refund to Pay Off Debt? Quote, mathematically, pay off debt with the highest interest rate that you can pay off completely. In most cases with a $5,000 refund, that means targeting some credit cards first, not necessarily a large car loan. But here's what matters just as much. Do you have an emergency fund? Are you still adding to your debt each month? Do you have upcoming expenses that you need to plan for? Those are all great ideas. And that really goes back to what I talked about earlier about an emergency fund. I think that is so important. Get a bare bones emergency fund in place. But when it comes to paying off debt, it is really worth it to consider the behavioral side versus the mathematical side, because you might be getting a good chunk of money that makes the math make sense. But this could be a key point where you can use the behavioral side of this to build some momentum. You could take the mathematical approach and pay off the highest interest rate and get the most bang for your buck when it comes to using your tax refund. But then the behavioral side comes into play. It could be a great way to start your actual debt payoff journey and lead you to becoming debt-free by using your tax refund to build momentum and knocking out some of those smaller debts with the snowball method. And I know I haven't given the definition of the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche in a while, so let me define them for you. A debt avalanche is where you pay off the highest interest rate debts first in order to save the most money on interest. And a debt snowball is where you pay off the smallest balance first, regardless of interest rate, to build momentum like a snowball. My brand new guide that released last week includes a debt snowball versus debt avalanche calculator. So make sure you go check it out. Last week's podcast episode was a great one. And there's also a fantastic YouTube video detailing even more of the tools in the guide. So make sure you go check it out. And those two approaches of snowball versus avalanche are a great way to walk through paying off your debt with your tax refund. It's all about where you want to end up. And if you just want to save some money and knock down those interest rates, then use the avalanche method. But if you want to get started on a debt-free path and a debt-free journey, the momentum might be the bigger thing. And using that to get your snowball rolling can be awesome. And it can be a huge motivator when it comes to the behavioral aspects of our money. But let's not forget about investing. This next article is titled 6 Smart Ways to Invest Your Tax Refund in 2026. Quote, boost your retirement plan. And we've mentioned this one already, but when it comes to investing, this can be one of the greatest tools to use to boost your retirement plan. This can be the thing that you need in order to get to your IRA contribution limit. This can also be a great way to get your retirement savings started if you've never actually felt like you could save money into an IRA. It can really get the ball rolling for you in the same way it could get your debt payoff journey started. It could get your investing journey started and help you say, wow, I can invest money. And you can get to the point where you know how to max out your IRA each year. You're going to adjust your tax withholding so that you can put some money throughout the year into your retirement account instead of just waiting for your tax refund. But that tax refund can be a great way to get that little bit of a push you need in order to get some money into your retirement savings. The next way you could invest it is to invest in stocks. Of course, you could use it to open a regular taxable brokerage account and get started if you already have some money working for retirement. A taxable brokerage account is a great place to put money because there can be some great tax planning opportunities in that account. Make sure to check out episode 9 of the podcast and the video on how to harvest gains and losses on Fidelity on YouTube. Both of those have great insights on tax planning and specifically capital gain and capital loss harvesting. But if you want to get started with investing, the guide that I released last week has a tool in it that's going to help you with building a simple portfolio. So make sure you go check that out because it's going to be a great way for you to get started with investing. The other two things worth mentioning here that you could use your tax refund for is a 529 account or an HSA account. If you have children, getting a 529 account started could certainly be something you're doing. Of course, make sure that you have an emergency fund set up, you're steadily saving for retirement, you're close to being debt-free or you are debt-free, and then you could potentially put some money into a 529. You could certainly sway me that using your tax refund now to go ahead and fund the 529 account would be a good use of the money. I could agree with that, but you got to make sure that you're set up first. Saving money for your kids' future is definitely something you can consider doing, but you need to make sure that your foundation is in place. And now a health savings account. I have to mention this tip on this episode. I'm not going to talk about it much here to save us some time, but go check out episode 6 of the podcast titled Free Healthcare with an HSA. That's a great one to help you learn how to use an HSA and how you could potentially invest with an HSA to get free healthcare later down the road. But now that we've touched on the problems with getting too large of a tax refund if you're getting one, what to actually do with it, now we're going to talk about how to plan for your taxes throughout 2026 so that you can use the money that's yours and plan for an optimal tax situation instead of just seeing what happens when it comes to next April. I wanted to mention a couple things going into 2026. As I read over an article talking about how your tax refund could be even bigger in 2026, I wanted to provide you a couple quick points to consider. And there may be some reasons that you're going to get a bigger tax refund. A couple things include a bigger standard deduction. That number went up across the board, and that's something to be aware of. There's also some bigger deductions for seniors, but that doesn't apply to those of you listening unless maybe you do your grandparents' taxes for them. But you may want to be aware of that. There's also some more deductions for tips and overtime, so that may impact your situation, but honestly, that may not be a huge chunk of your income. And there's also an expanded SALT deduction, which stands for state and local taxes. So be aware of that if you're paying property taxes or local taxes, because that may be another reason that you're going to get a larger tax refund. But this whole space about a tax refund and adjusting it may seem a little overwhelming as you're doing some planning for 2026. I know there's potentially a lot that goes into it, and the documentation can sometimes be challenging when it comes to filing a proper W-4 with the IRS. So I do want to touch on the tax withholding estimator from the IRS. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how to actually use it. It's linked in the show notes, of course, but let's touch on it real quick so that you can leave this episode knowing that there is a way to adjust your tax situation. It may take a little bit of time, but trust me, it's going to be worth it to ensure that you're able to use your money next year and you're not just giving it to the IRS with an interest-free loan. So, the tax withholding estimator from the IRS. Here's the objection that I hear most of the time when it comes to adjusting your withholdings. People say, Skylar, what if I get it wrong and end up owing a bunch of money come tax time? I'd rather get a huge refund than owe a huge bill. And that fear is completely valid. I don't want to dismiss it. Owing money to the IRS is stressful and no one wants that surprise bill. But here's the thing, this tool, this withholding estimator, is the tool that the IRS has made to help you figure it out. It's called the tax withholding estimator, and it's going to do the math for you. You put in your income, your filing status, your deductions, and it tells you exactly how to set up your W-4 so that you can come as close to zero as possible at the end of the year. You shouldn't get a big bill or a big refund, just as close to zero as possible, and that's the goal. And real quick here, I know you maybe heard me mention on the last episode, if someone was able to get close to zero, let me know down in the comments or send me an email, and I promise there will be an award for the person who got closest to zero. And now the estimator does take about 25 minutes, but it gets you a pre-filled W-4 to give to your work's HR department. And remember, it's extremely important to make sure your tax withholding is honed in because that's going to help you actually use your money throughout the year. And just remember, if you don't have the right withholdings, it can complicate your financial planning, give you a false sense of security, and maybe you're not paying enough in taxes, so you feel like your income is more than it really should be. Maybe you're paying too much and you're at risk of tax-related scams, or you're missing out on a ton of opportunity cost. And just remember, those disadvantages that we talked about in the beginning with the big refund, some of those also apply to overpaying. So that's why it's important to get this number right. And it's one of the easiest and biggest tax planning opportunities. Make sure that you're actually paying enough throughout the year so that you get to use the rest of your money for yourself. But that does it for today's research. So now we're going to get into a fantastic case study that's going to help you apply everything we've learned so far today. I hope you enjoy. Let me introduce you to Ryan. Ryan is 27 years old and he earns $105,000 per year. His wife works part-time, making around $22,000 per year, and on paper they should be doing really well. But every year, especially as it gets close to tax time, Ryan feels this low-grade financial anxiety that he just can't get rid of. This couple in today's case study is carrying about $28,000 in student loan debt. They have about a $14,000 car loan and next to nothing in an emergency fund. Their 401k contributions are minimal because they feel like they just can't afford to do that right now. And the one thing that they look forward to every year is that good old tax refund. Last year it was almost $6,000. The year before it was over $6,000. It's like an extra paycheck to them. They use it to pay down a good chunk of their debt, and they know it'll cover them for a few months to give them some breathing room through the summer. And it helps them feel financially normal for a little while. Ryan has his W-4 set aggressively like this on purpose. He tells himself it's the only way they're actually going to save anything. The one thing though here that you're probably saying too after listening to today's episode is he doesn't realize that he's giving the IRS roughly $480 every single month interest-free while he sits there stressed because his regular expenses feel so tight on his income when he actually has potentially almost $500 extra that could be his. What would you do with an extra $500 per month if that's what adjusting your tax withholding got you? So let's really get into this with Ryan. To get this started, Ryan decided to sit down and run his numbers for the very first time. He used that tax withholding estimator that I was talking about, and he submitted his correct W-4. And this allowed him to get that extra $480 per month in take-home pay. They opened up a high-yield savings account and set up that automatic transfer so that it felt like that money was still just coming out of their paycheck, at least into a savings though. They treated this like a bill, so that for the first 3 months, they were able to actually build up some savings. They got a starter emergency fund of just shy of $1,500, but they could actually see the money growing instead of just waiting until April. They finally felt motivated that they were able to get some savings going, and their financial anxiety seemed to just melt away while they were able to see this money grow. Even if the savings account was just earning 2%, 3%, it's better than the 0% interest-free loan that they were giving the government with that extra savings. Which leads us into some of the habits that they started to develop here. With that extra monthly cash flow, Ryan realized they could save some more money into his 401k, and he bumped up his contribution to 4% to maximize his employer match. And one of the amazing tools that came out in the guide that released last week is one that helps you see how much you're missing if you aren't getting the full employer match. So be sure to check out that guide and see just how much money you're leaving on the table if you're not getting your employer match yet. But now Ryan was able to keep that automatic savings into their high yield savings account set up, and he even added a second one into an IRA because he was feeling so motivated that now they had some money and they could actually save money. Their emergency fund continued growing steadily throughout the year. And here's the real cool thing. Him and his wife decided to set up a monthly budget meeting so that they could look at this account together and realize they were doing great things. And this budget meeting replaced the constant money anxiety they were feeling with a scheduled check-in that they actually looked forward to. And a quick sidebar on budget meetings that I want to add in here. They are a fantastic tool. They completely revolutionize how you look at money. If you have a written agenda, it makes it so much easier to remember what to talk about and not stress about it throughout the month. I was talking to my wife just yesterday at our budget meeting about how far we've come. We used to stress about money throughout the month, but now we honestly only talk about money once a month for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half. What would it mean to you to not have to worry about money throughout the entire month? I promise you, you're going to spend so much less time worrying about money when you have a set time on the calendar for 1 to 2 hours instead of worrying about it for 15 to 30 minutes every few days. So please, one of the things that you can take from this case study is a monthly budget meeting. It's going to be extremely helpful for you. But now to the results. 12 months later, Ryan and his wife have almost $6,000 sitting in their high yield savings account that would have been earning $0 in interest if they had just given it to the IRS and waited for their tax refund. But they've made consistent progress as well on their car loan. It's just continuing to go down, and now that they're getting a good emergency fund, they feel like they might be able to use some of their extra cash flow towards that. But let's not also forget that Ryan is now getting his full employer match, which is going to impact them for the rest of their life with that money they're now taking advantage of. And there's some money in a Roth IRA, which is huge. and is helping them feel like retirement's actually going to be something that they can take advantage of. And now their next tax refund was only around $400, but you know what? They didn't care. They no longer needed that tax refund to survive. And the financial stress that Ryan used to feel from January to March is gone, because every month they're checking in on their money together, and now they're not sitting waiting on the IRS to get them their money back. And the key insight here is they're not bad with money. Most people accidentally build up this system to starve themselves to cash flow for 11 months of the year to get this massive tax refund. And remember, fixing your withholdings isn't going to change your income. It's just going to change who has access to it, and it's going to give you access to your money. So here's the quick win that you can take from Ryan's story right now. Look at your tax refund from this year. Whatever the number is, divide it by 12. That's how much extra money you could have had every single month if your withholdings had been correct. If your refund was $3,600, that's $300 a month. If it was $5,400, that's $450 a month. Now write that number down, and at your next budget meeting, ask yourself, what would we do differently every single month if we had this much money every single month? That's your money. And starting now, you can have access to it because you're going to go and adjust your tax withholdings so that you can use your own money instead of just giving it to the IRS and waiting for them to give it back. But that does it for today's case study. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed writing this case study and going through it with you. So I hope you took away a lot from today's episode, but we're going to wrap it all up next. The one action item for each and every one of you today is to review your latest tax refund and see what kind of tax refund you got, and then apply what you learned today in either adjusting your tax withholdings or leaving it the same and beginning to apply some of the other strategies so that you can actually use your tax refund. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Next week's episode is going to help you know what to do when all the alarms are sounding and you're trying to stay steady with your investment plan. So make sure to subscribe and share with a friend because you're not going to want to miss it next week. We're going to walk through an investment fire drill. Helping people hone in their tax returns is something I really enjoy doing because it can unlock a lot of money for you throughout the year, and it's one of the lowest hanging fruits for your tax planning. So if you want some help figuring out your taxes for next year and making sure you're actually getting all the money you deserve from your paycheck, let's schedule a free call. You can take action on this free call by using the link right at the top of the show notes. To schedule that free time with me, we'll sit down, we'll have a conversation about your tax situation to make sure you're taking advantage of all the money that you should be getting paid so that you're not overpaying the IRS. And you're not going to want to miss next week's episode. We're talking all about an investment fire drill. And don't forget about last week's episode with the brand new guide for financial planning for young adults to help you build your own financial plan. It's supercharged with interactive tools and real-world applications that's going to help you build your own plan. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode, and go check out last week's episode about the new guide. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Financial Planning for Young Adults. I'm your host, Skylar Fleming. Have a great week. And hey, quick heads up. This podcast, it's meant to be educational and it's for entertainment purposes. It's not personalized financial advice for your specific situation. So before you go out and make any big money moves, make sure you chat with a qualified financial professional who knows your full financial picture.